March 1945. Germany was burning, the Reich was collapsing, but for 500 American prisoners locked deep behind enemy lines. The war wasn't over. They were starving. Cold, forgotten. Men who had fought through Normandy, the Bulge, and beyond. Now wasting away in a German prison camp called Hammelburg. They didn't know it yet, but someone was coming for them. A mission that would go down as one of the most daring and disastrous rescues of the entire war. It started with a name, one man, General George S. Patton. By early 1945, Patton's Third Army had ripped through Nazi defenses across Europe. Fast, brutal, relentless. But one report changed everything. A source told Patton that his own son-in-law, Lieutenant Colonel John K. Waters, had been captured and was being held in Hammelburg prison camp. Patton froze. He knew the rules of war. Generals don't send troops for family, not for one man. Not behind enemy lines. But this wasn't just one man. Hammelburg held hundreds of Allied officers, men who'd been tortured, starved, and forgotten by their own armies. Patton's blood boiled. He'd always believed no soldier should be left behind. And so, against every warning, he made a choice. He ordered an unauthorized mission, a rescue, behind enemy lines. No official approval, no backup, just pure guts. The order went to task. Force bomb a small armored group led by Captain Abraham Baum, only 23 years old. He didn't know it yet, but his mission was nearly suicidal. Task Force Baum had around 300 men, 57 vehicles, and barely enough fuel for one direction. Their goal: drive 50 miles through enemy territory, storm Hammelburg camp, free 500 prisoners, and make it back alive. Simple on paper, impossible in reality. The Germans still controlled the region. Roads were mined. Towns packed with enemy troops, fuel depots destroyed. Even Patton's own officers warned him, "Sir, this mission could get them all killed." But Patton's voice was final. "Those men need saving. Get them out." Night fell. The engines roared to life. The convoy rolled into the dark. No headlights. No radio chatter. Just the low hum of engines and the clatter of treads on wet earth. The men inside were nervous. No one really knew what they were heading into. Only a few had even seen the map. Baum stood at the front, inside his armored half-track, eyes fixed on the road. He wasn't the type to question orders, but something about this mission felt wrong. It wasn't the danger. It was the timing. Why now, when the war was almost over? Why so deep when their own supply lines were barely holding? Still, orders were orders. The further they went, the quieter it became. German villages slept in eerie silence. Church bells broken. Smoke still rising from distant ruins. Now and then, a flash, a tracer round, a silhouette in the trees. The enemy was everywhere. Baum's men moved fast, crushing through roads barely wide enough for tanks. Every mile forward meant more fuel gone. And they knew it. But they couldn't stop now. By dawn, they'd made contact. A German convoy appeared on the road ahead. Trucks. Infantry. Anti-tank guns. Baum ordered fire. Within seconds, the forest exploded. Shells whistled. Men shouted. Smoke poured through the trees. The Americans tore through the convoy, destroying everything in their path. It was their first taste of what lay ahead, and it was only the beginning. As they pushed deeper, reports started coming in. German reinforcements were moving. Radio chatter hinted they knew something was coming. Still, the task force pressed on. No retreat. At one point, they drove straight through a small town. The locals barely had time to react. A German officer ran into the street, shouting orders. He never finished the sentence. Baum's gunner didn't hesitate. The column thundered past burning buildings, windows shattering under machine gun bursts. each block. A reminder, this was no stealth mission anymore. The Germans knew by noon. Fuel was running low. Half the vehicles had taken hits. Several men were already dead or missing. Baum radioed back. Mission continues. Enemy resistance heavy. Static. No reply. They were too far out. Now. Every man in the convoy knew there was no going back. They reached a crossroads. One sign pointed east toward Hammelburg, the other south toward safety. Baum looked at the sign, then at his men. They were exhausted, dirty, eyes hollow. He gave a short nod. East. No one argued. As the sun dipped low, they crossed a ridge and saw it. Barbed wire. WA to CHTOWERS. Barracks and rows. AMM ELBURG. The prison camp. Their destination. Through his binoculars, Baum saw them, hundreds of men inside. Weak, thin, barely standing. Some stared up in confusion at the sound of approaching engines. They thought it was another German patrol. Then they saw the white star on the tanks, and hope sparked again. Baum clenched his jaw. This is it. They had made it. 50 miles through enemy lines. Dozens of firefights. And now the rescue. But there was one problem. They were almost out of fuel. Half their tanks were damaged. And the Germans. Were already closing. In the sky thundered with distant artillery. Smoke rose from the hills. Radio intercepts confirmed it. A German panzer division was on the move straight toward them. Inside the camp, prisoners gathered by the fence. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. American tanks. Their own men coming to get them out. Some wept. Others cheered. But one man in the crowd froze. He recognized the insignia on a passing tank. It was his father-in-law's division, Lieutenant Colonel John K. Waters. The man Patton had risked everything to save. And outside those fences, Captain Baum's engines began to sputter. Fuel low. Ammunition lower. Asterisk enemy forces all around. He looked back at his men, then at the perk camp. This was it. They'd come too far to stop. Now, get ready, he said quietly. We're going in. The turrets turned toward the barbed wire. Engines roared. The first shell loaded. And as the sun vanished behind the hills, task force Baum charged straight into hell. The night was silent. Too silent. Captain Mucci felt it in his gut. Something wasn't right. The Cabanatuan camp was just 2 miles ahead. 500 American prisoners waited, unaware that freedom was marching toward them. Suddenly, a Japanese patrol, 6 soldiers on bicycles, heading straight for them. The Rangers froze. Not a sound, not a breath. Mucci raised his hand. His men slowly crouched behind the tall grass. The patrol passed. Then one of the Rangers sneezed. Everyone froze again. A soldier turned his head. A pause. A heartbeat. Then they kept moving. The Rangers exhaled. They got lucky, but the luck wouldn't last forever. The plan was clear. The Filipino guerrillas would block the road north and south. The Rangers would crawl through open fields and hit the camp at exactly 7:00 p.m. No gunfire before that. No mistakes, one noise, and 500 men died. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the Rangers reached the final field. Open ground. No cover, 400 yards of dry rice paddies between them and the camp. They dropped to the dirt and began to crawl. Inch by inch. For an hour. Every move synchronized. Every heartbeat pounding in their ears. Inside the camp, the prisoners sat weak, starving, hopeless. Many could barely stand. Some whispered prayers. Others just stared into nothing. Then far away, a faint whistle. Followed by a gunshot. The signal. At 7 p.m. Sharp the jungle erupted. M1919. Machine guns opened fire. Filipino guerrillas ambushed the Japanese. Reinforcements on the roads. And the Rangers stormed the camp from both sides. Move! 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 The guards never saw it coming. Within seconds, the towers were hit. Snipers took out the searchlights. Darkness swallowed the camp. Confusion, panic, shouts in Japanese, screams in English. Smoke, bullets. The Rangers kicked down the gates. Prisoners blinked in disbelief. Are you Americans? One whispered, "Yes, buddy. We're here to take you home." Tears. Laughter. Shock. But it wasn't over. Dozens of prisoners couldn't walk. The Rangers had to carry them, piggyback, stretchers, anything, outside the camp. Machine gun fire roared. The Japanese regrouped. They were coming. The Rangers moved fast. They dragged, carried, and pushed the weak through the mud. One wrong move, and they'd all be surrounded. They reached the riverbank. Water glistened under the moonlight. The escape route. But then, headlights in the distance. Trucks. Japanese reinforcements. Muchi turned to his men. "Hold them off. We'll get them across." Rifles ready. A few men stayed behind. To fight. To delay. The rest carried the wounded across the shallow river. Prisoners shivering, crying, thanking them. The battle raged behind them. Tracer rounds cut through the night. But the Rangers didn't stop. By dawn, they reached the safe zone. Out of 121 Rangers and Scouts, every one of them made it back. And all 500 prisoners were free. It became one of the most successful rescue missions in U.S. history. A mission so daring, it almost never happened. But they did it, because giving up was never an option. The jungle was quiet again, too. Quiet. The gunfire had stopped. The screams had faded. Only the heavy breathing of exhausted men remained. Captain Muchi looked over the open field. Bodies of Japanese guards scattered like broken shadows. Smoke drifted above the wooden towers. The mission had succeeded. But it wasn't over. 500 prisoners, weak, starving, and terrified, now depended on them. And dawn was coming. They had to vanish before the Japanese regrouped. Muchi raised his hand. "Move, now." The Rangers sprang into motion. They carried the sick, supported the wounded, dragged half-conscious men through mud and grass. Every sound felt like a scream in the silence. Every step, a risk. Behind them, the camp still burned. The glow of fire flickered against the trees, marking the spot where hell had been breached. They had 30 miles to cover. 30 miles of jungle, fields, and enemy territory. Muchi turned to Lieutenant Ranger Henry Hank Bell. "Scout ahead. Find us a route through the hills." Bell nodded, clutching his Thompson, eyes scanning the black horizon. The men began to move, slow, cautious, silent. The first few miles were steady, but the prisoners were collapsing one by one. Their bodies had forgotten strength. Muscles gone. Feet raw. Some hadn't walked in months. One prisoner fell face first into the dirt. Muchi knelt beside him. "Can you move, soldier?" The man looked up, tears in his eyes. "Sir, I can't feel my legs." Muchi clenched his jaw. He couldn't leave him. No one gets left behind. 2 Rangers lifted the man and carried him between them, step by step. No complaint. No hesitation. The line moved deeper into the night. Above, distant engines rumbled. Japanese trucks. Searching. The Rangers froze beneath the trees. Lights swept across the jungle edge. Voices shouted in Japanese. Orders. Angry, Muchi whispered, "Stay down." The soldiers pressed their faces into the dirt. Heartbeats thundered louder than the trucks. Minutes passed. Then silence. The engines faded. They moved again, but something gnawed at Muchi. Japanese wouldn't give up this easily. They'd hunt them at sunrise. They needed help. Suddenly, a soft whistle from ahead. Bell returned from scouting. His face was pale. Captain, there's a village up ahead. Filipino civilians. They'll help us. Muchi hesitated. They couldn't risk being spotted, but they needed food. Water. Shelter. Let's move, he ordered. The column crawled toward the village. Roosters crowed faintly in the distance. Smoke from cooking fires curled into the dawn air. When the locals saw the ragged group, American Rangers and half-dead prisoners, they didn't run. They dropped their tools, rushed forward, and began offering what little they had. Water. Rice. Banana leaves for shade. An old man spoke in broken English. We hide you. Japanese patrol come soon. You stay here. Muchi clasped the man's hands. Thank you. We owe you our lives. The villagers hid the column inside rice huts and barns. The rangers posted guards, and for the first time in days, they breathed. Some prisoners wept silently, others just stared, hollow-eyed, as if afraid to believe it was real. Corporal Frazier sat with one of them, a man named Lieutenant Dunlop, once a strong pilot, now frail as a shadow. Thought I'd die in that camp. Dunlop whispered. You didn't, Frazier said softly. Not on my watch. Dunlop managed a weak smile. Then I guess I owe you a beer. If I ever walk again. Make it two, Frazier replied. They both laughed quietly, a strange sound, after months of pain. But laughter didn't last long. By mid-morning, a Filipino scout ran into the hut, breathless. Japanese patrol, 1 mile south. Searching. Muchi didn't hesitate. Everyone up. Move out. We leave now. The prisoners groaned, but the rangers pulled them to their feet. They couldn't stay. Within minutes, they were back on the trail. The heat was brutal. The sun burned there. Backs. Insects swarmed, but fear kept them moving. Every branch crack sounded like gunfire. Every bird call felt like a warning. They reached a river crossing by noon. Water was brown and slow. Muchi looked both ways. No sign of the enemy. Cross fast. Stay low. The rangers waded in, carrying prisoners on their shoulders. Some slipped, some nearly drowned, but they made it across. Then, gunfire. From the far bank. Bullets ripped through the trees. Japanese scouts had spotted them. Down! Muchi shouted. The rangers dove behind logs, firing back. The prisoners screamed, scattering for cover. Tracer rounds sliced through the leaves. The water exploded in sprays, suppressing fire. 2 machine gunners dropped to their knees. Their Brownings thundered, cutting down shapes in the distance. The ambush lasted minutes. Felt like hours. Then, silence. The enemy retreated. Muchi checked his men. 3 wounded. No one dead. Couldn't stay here. He gathered everyone again. We move north. We'll make the rendezvous point by nightfall. The prisoners nodded weakly. They trusted him now. Blindly. As they marched. Muchi looked back one last time. The smoke of gunfire drifted above the trees. Somewhere out there, the Japanese regrouped. And he knew they'd come again. But for now, the men kept moving, through heat, hunger, and exhaustion, because somewhere ahead, home waited. The jungle came alive again. But this time, not with silence. With war. By late afternoon, the scouts returned. Faces pale, eyes wide. Captain, one whispered. They're coming. Hundreds of them. Muchi didn't ask how many. He didn't need to. The sound in the distance said it all. Engines. Boots. Shouts. In Japanese. They were closing in. Muchi turned to his men. We can't outrun them. We move through the marsh. The rangers exchanged glances. The marsh was treacherous, deep. Mud. Leeches. Snakes. But it was the only way. Move. They plunged into the swamp. The water was Waist-deep, thick, cold. The prisoners struggled to keep up. Some stumbled. Some sank to their knees. Rangers pulled them out. Again and again. Every second mattered. Behind them, machine gun bursts echoed through the trees. The Japanese had reached the village they'd left behind. The sound of gunfire told them everything. The villagers who helped them were gone. Mucci clenched his jaw, eyes hard. He couldn't think about it now. He had to get the men home. Hours passed. The sun dipped. The jungle turned black. They moved by instinct, now following the faint glimmer of fireflies. The smell of wet earth. Then a flare, bright red. Hissing across the night sky. Mucci's stomach dropped. They found us. A second later, explosions. Mortar shells slammed into the keel. Trees. The ground shook. Men fell. Take cover. The swamp erupted in chaos. Mud splashed. Screams echoed. Rangers dragged prisoners behind fallen logs. The Japanese were firing blindly, trying to flush them out. Mucci grabbed his radio operator. Call in the guerrillas. Tell Pahota we're under fire. Static. No signal. The operator shook his head. Nothing, sir. Mucci's face hardened. Then we fight. He rallied his men. Set up the line. Hold them off until dark. Rifles snapped. Machine guns roared. The swamp became a battlefield. A ranger named Walker fired until his barrel smoked. Japanese squad charged, grenades in hand. Walker gunned them down. Then one grenade landed near him. Heaf. Dove. Too late. The explosion threw him into the mud. Blood poured from his leg. Corporal Frazier crawled over. Walker, stay with me. Walker coughed, face pale. Get the prisoners out. Frazier grabbed him. You're coming too, damn it. But Walker shook his head. His hand pressed something into Frazier's palm, his dog tags. Then he was gone. Frazier sat there, silent for a second. Then he picked up Walker's gun and kept firing. The battle raged for hours. Each burst of gunfire tore the night apart. Then, faintly, the sound of whistles. Filipino guerrillas. They'd arrived. Gunfire erupted from the flank. The Japanese were caught between two fronts. The jungle lit up with flashes. Screams. Smoke. Mucci saw his chance. Fall back. Move them out now. The rangers gathered the prisoners, dragged the wounded, and began to withdraw north. Behind them, the guerrillas covered the retreat. Dozens of them. Brave men who knew the cost. One shouted as he reloaded, "For freedom!" He never finished the sentence. A bullet cut him down. By midnight, the Americans had made it past the marsh. Exhausted. Starved. But alive. They collapsed under the thick canopy of trees. The rain began to fall. Cold, relentless. Mucci sat alone for a moment. His clothes soaked. His body trembling from exhaustion. He looked at the prisoners, sleeping in mud, faces hollow, but breathing. He whispered to himself, "We're almost there." Then, footsteps. Lieutenant Bell appeared, face streaked with rain and dirt. "Sir, we lost 5 men. Maybe more." Mucci didn't answer. He just nodded. Bell hesitated. "You think it was worth it?" Mucci looked out toward the darkness. "Every one of them we saved says yes." Bell sighed, sat beside him. Walker didn't make it. Mucci closed his eyes. He didn't speak, didn't have to. The rain covered the silence between them. By dawn, the jungle was eerily quiet again. No gunfire. No movement. But they knew. The Japanese were still hunting. They had 1 day left. One chance to reach the extraction point. Mucci stood, pulled the strap of his rifle tight, and whispered, "Let's bring them home." Dawn. The jungle shimmered under the rising sun. Mist curled through the trees. Birds began to sing. Again, a sound almost too peaceful for what had just happened. "Captain." Mucci stood on a ridge. Watching the first rays of light break through the canopy, he could see them below, his men, the prisoners, the tired, broken faces of those who had survived the impossible. They were close now, only a few more miles, and they'd be safe. But safety still felt like a dream. They had food again, supplied by local guerrillas, who'd risked everything to help. Some men had bandages made of torn shirts. Others limped, leaning on branches as crutches, yet not a single one complained. Mucci gathered them. We push one more time. Just one. No speech, no heroics, just quiet resolve. The column began to move. Slow, steady, determined. Each footstep sounded like defiance. Each breath, a refusal to die in that jungle. Hours passed. Then, something changed. The air grew still. The jungle opened up. And in the distance, they heard it. Engines. But not the enemy. Trucks. American trucks. And then dash voices. English. Over here. Rangers, over here. The sound hit them like thunder. Some prisoners cried. Others fell to their knees. One man whispered, "I'm home." Mucci felt the tension leave his body for the first time in days. He smiled faintly. Wearily, they'd done it. When they reached the Allied lines, doctors rushed to the prisoners. Men who hadn't seen medicine in 3 years were treated on the spot. Some could barely speak. Others couldn't stop talking. A general shook Mucci's hand. "Captain, you brought back 500 men from hell." Mucci simply replied, "They walked out themselves, sir. We just showed them the way." For the rescued soldiers, the world looked different now. Every breath felt like a miracle. Every sunrise, a gift. One of them. Lieutenant Dunlop was asked later what he remembered most. He didn't mention the pain or the hunger. He said, "I remember the first sound of their boots. That's when I knew we were alive again." But not all made it home. The Filipino guerrillas who had fought beside the Rangers, many never saw their families again. Their names faded into history. Unwritten, unspoken. Yet without them, the mission would have died before it began. Months later, after the war ended, Mucci returned to the States. He was decorated for bravery. The men he saved called him a hero. But when asked about the mission, he only said one thing: "We weren't heroes. We were just soldiers who couldn't leave our brothers behind." He retired quietly, lived a simple life. No medals on the wall, no speeches. But every year, on the anniversary of the raid, he'd open a small box. Inside were dog tags, names of the men who didn't come back. He'd hold them in his hands and whisper, "Mission complete." Asterisk. In the final months of World War II, 121 Rangers and 200 Filipino guerrillas crossed 30 miles of enemy territory to rescue 513 American prisoners of war. Against impossible odds, they succeeded. It remains one of the most daring and successful rescue missions in history. A reminder that in humanity's darkest moments, courage burns brightest.